Welcome to Intermerifica, New Mexico, the channel where we look at things of wonder from the perspectives of faith and reason, philosophy and theology. I'm your host, Daniel Kelly, and one of the things we especially look at is the wonders of the culture, right? Intermerifica, we find ourselves amidst the wonders, as the Second Vatican Council said. And today we're looking at some master storytellers. So I've done a couple videos on master storytellers, and what does it mean to be a master storyteller? Well, one of the criteria I use is pretty much any book you pick up of theirs has to be really good. They have to be reliably a good storyteller. And that's not set in stone, but pretty much any master storyteller, that's one of the criteria. Another thing is they have to shed a new light on something. You have to be able to see things different. They advance human knowledge in a way by showing things from a different perspective than you could get anywhere else. So that's the mark of a master storyteller. When we look at these master storytellers, I try to highlight some of their little-known works, because a lot of the master storytellers have really well-known works, and you should definitely check those out, but I want to highlight works of theirs that are less well-known. So today I want to look at C.S. Lewis. I think many people would agree that he is a master storyteller. He's one of the best that there is. It's true that pretty much anything you pick up of Lewis's is going to be good. I can tell you right that I don't think I've read a book of C.S. Lewis that I've been like, that's not really a good book, don't really like that. For his lesser known works, it's harder because people know his works pretty well. I could do, and I am going to do videos on Till We Have Faces and The Pilgrim's Regress. Those are less well-known works of his that are very good, and I encourage you to read them. But today I wanted to look at one of his Narnia books. You're like, well, Narnia, that's weird because those are his really well-known books. And I think, though, these really capture the other criteria where he helps us see things differently that no other author can help us see. Especially two of his books in the Narnia, they're not my favorite books in Narnia necessarily, but The Silver Chair and The Last Battle both show things that we couldn't see in a different way. And today we're going to talk about The Last Battle. One thing I love about the Narnia series is that they're kind of like just an extended meditation on Revelation 5:5, where one of Jesus' titles for himself is he's the Lion of the tribe of Judah, right? And I love that you can get, if you just meditate spiritually on any part of the Bible, you can get so much out of it. And really, that's what the Narnia is a meditation on Jesus is the Lion of the tribe of Judah. What would that look like imaginatively? And I love that about Narnia. One of the marks of a good story is every time you read it, this is one of the criteria when I'm looking, is this a really good story or not? A really masterfully done story, every time you read it, you enjoy it more, or it's still good. So being able to reread it is really important. A lot of times you find less good stories, you find their shallowness in that they, the first time you read it, okay, yeah, all your emotions and stuff are good, but you read it again, it's like, that wasn't really very good. One of the things that showed this the best to me is actually a video game, Dragon Quest VIII. The first time I played through it, I was like, whoa, that's an amazing game. And if you ever replay it, awful. It shows how very paper thin it is. But anytime a lot of times when you reread a story, replay a video game, anything like that, rewatch a movie, you can see some of its flaws more. And a really good story, you can appreciate more and more the more times you read it. And I say Narnia is like that. I actually didn't like Narnia very much when I first heard. I liked The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe when I was a child, but the rest of the books, not so much. But the more I've read them, the more I like them, and I think that's a sign of a good story. And I want to do things a little backwards today and start with answering some of the objections, because I've heard a lot of objections to Lewis as a storyteller, and especially Narnia as a story, and I wanted to answer some of those objections before getting to what I really think is good and masterful. One of the things I've heard from a lot of otherwise intelligent people is Narnia. One of the problems with Narnia is it's kind of Islamophobic, right? Or he's prejudiced because the Calmarines, one of the main bad guys, are just parodies of Islamic people or Middle Eastern people. This objection is not strong to me at all. First of all, you could, even if you thought that was he's having the bad guys be these Islamic people, then, well, he had participated in a war where the biggest Islamic empire was committing genocide, okay? The Ottoman Empire literally was committing genocide against the Christians there, the Armenian Christians. So it's understandable. But that's not even true. I feel like people have trouble projecting themselves to a different world that doesn't have our problems, our clashes between each other and stuff, and just say, hey, look, there's a world where these guys are bad guys. And they're obviously not even Islamic. They worship this demon god Tash. And Muslims worship God. Okay, Allah is the God of Abraham. They might have a not good understanding of the God of Abraham, but he's God. That's who they worship. They don't worship a demon god. So these are obviously a pagan people. So I don't think that's a good objection to Narnia at all. Another thing that I think is an objection to Narnia especially is it's too in your face, too preachy. The analogy is too close. And I definitely felt that before I was a Christian and I read these, that it just seemed like Lewis was being too preachy. And sometimes people bring up Tolkien, right? That Tolkien didn't like Lewis's just too in-your-face analogies in his fantasy, which people exaggerate that. Tolkien did the same thing all of us have done, read Narnia to our kids. So yeah, he disliked some of the analogy, but he still recognized, hey, the good parts in the story. With this objection, I think that it is helpful. You see it in any, like when a case goes to the Supreme Court, it's good to have these hypotheticals. It's good to move things away from the reality so we get out of all the difficulties to, okay, let's just have these ideas in new dress so we can look at it afresh. But if a hypothetical goes too far, too crazy, it won't be helpful. So it's good if it's close. And I think Narnia does that. And anyways, that's an objection you can have to most of the Narnia books, but I think The Last Battle, the book we're going to talk about today, doesn't have these objections. It's not too preachy and too close to comfort, right? To Christian ideas and all that. It is Christian. It is very much an analogy for the end of the world, right? But I don't think it's too in your face, too preachy. The last objection, I've heard this from a lot of otherwise intelligent people that love Lewis, is the idea that it's not fair and it's not good that Susan goes to hell. One of the four main characters, right, in the Narnia stories, the High Queen Susan, they say, oh, she goes to hell for liking makeup and lipstick and stuff, and just wanting to be a normal teenager. Lewis has her go to hell. Whoa, this objection is crazy. It's just too harsh of an objection, because first of all, he doesn't talk about her too much, and Lewis doesn't say that she goes to hell. He says that she did get distracted from the Christian way by worldly stuff. That's not a controversial thing to say. People can do that. He doesn't say that she goes to hell. And really, the sin that he describes her doing is something that deserves hell. Susan doesn't go to hell, but it is because what she says is she experienced Narnia, she lived it and stuff, but then she is saying, oh, people say that stuff like that can't happen, so I'm going to say that it's not true. And so not keeping to what we know to be true, not sticking with reality no matter what, that's to be faithless. Faith is to stick to what we know is true. And to be faithless is to not stick to what we know is true. So that's a major sin. But anyways, it just says that Susan had a longer time getting to stuff. It doesn't say her ultimate destiny. So those are some of the objections I've heard to Narnia. And so before we got into Narnia, The Last Battle itself, I wanted to answer those, and I hope those answers are helpful. But The Last Battle, well, first of all, it's the end of the Narnian world, right? That's what it's about. And a lot of the other Narnia books, I'm sad that they're too short, like The Horse and His Boy and The Voyage of the Dawn Treader are my favorites, because I like those adventure kind of stories where you're exploring new things. That's my favorite. That's probably why I like Star Trek and things like that. But they're too short, all of the Narnia books. So it starts and then it ends. But The Last Battle is the perfect length, because parts of it are so difficult and so painful in a way that if it went on longer, it wouldn't be a good book. And this book definitely helps us to see something in a way nothing else helps us to see it. And I'm going to get back to that. So it's the story of the last king of Narnia, right? He's a good king. And I like how the story starts. It starts in a very beast fable kind of way. My upbringing is, I was raised in the Hindu culture, and it reminds me of that, the beast fables and the animals and stuff in Hindu stories. And I know that C.S. Lewis really looked deeply into Hinduism, so I appreciate that. I like how it starts with the talking monkey and the talking donkey, and just the whole beast fable vibe is so strong and really, really good. And then it shows, the last battle shows how when good people act rashly, it does a lot of damage, right? Because the king hears all this evil stuff that's going on, and he just goes, he doesn't wait for his troops and stuff, he just goes to solve it himself. And it shows that if you act rashly, bad stuff's going to happen, even really good people. And I like that. I love that in this, the good guys lose. It's a children's story, which is interesting. It's a good way to introduce these difficult themes to your children. But the evil people are very evil, which I like. The good people are very good. And despite that, they lose. So it's very much against the prosperity gospel mindset. And that brings us to what I really, really love about this book, is it takes every objection that atheists have had to God on the basis of the problem of evil. All of them happen. And still, there's no doubt, Lewis shows that there's no doubt that God is still good. So let's go through it. Well, the good people are doing stupid things. They're trying to be good, but they're doing it badly, like we see all the time. Good people are ineffective. Evil people are effective. And guess what? God doesn't intervene, right? We get that objection a lot, where if God's so good, why doesn't he stop these stuff? Why doesn't he help his servants? And he does, but sometimes it seems, wow, okay, where's his intervention? Well, that happens in this book, and it's very realistically portrayed. Innocents suffer. Children die in this book. Sorry if you haven't read it. But yeah, children die in this. Animals die in it. Innocents suffer really badly. Wow, that's one of the big objections. But it doesn't seem, still, I'm going to keep coming back to this, God's goodness doesn't seem besmirched in this book. All this horrible stuff is happening. God, when he does intervene, it's too weak, right? It seems that he does intervene, but doesn't really seem to solve everything. And we see that all the time. Why is St. Anthony helping people find their keys when there's these horrible things happening? Why is God making these weak interventions, right? That's an objection people have. There's horrendous natural disasters in this. There's environmental degradation, all this stuff. People say, okay, I can see that free will is an explanation for the evil that we do, but what about when a tsunami wipes out a village, right? Well, this book's got that from the divine perspective, right? And it's really realistically portrayed. People, there's even people, he shows God is giving them all his goodness, but hell, when we choose hell, there's no goodness that we can get that will, because we've rejected the good. God himself is the good, and we can't have goodness in anything else if we rejected God. So it shows all these bad things, but still, and God doesn't intervene to stop these bad things, and God's goodness is still paramount. That's the central part of the book. So I love that, and I think The Last Battle, if you read it, you'll be able to see this really well. The other thing I really like about The Last Battle, and this might come as a surprise to some people, is its description of purgatory. You might be like, wow, I don't remember purgatory in The Last Battle, in the Narnia books, but it is there, because when everybody dies, about halfway through the book, and they're in the afterlife, and wow, the afterlife is described as really good in many ways, but it's not heaven. We know it's not heaven because they say time and time again during this whole afterlife part that they're not in Aslan's country. Aslan's country, Aslan is, right, he's the representation of Jesus. That's heaven. And it shows the situation of the souls in purgatory, right? Although at the end of our world, there's not going to be purgatory anymore, but I think that this is a good meditation on purgatory. They're not in Aslan's country yet. They've got all the good stuff. In heaven, we're not going to sin anymore, right? We have to work through some of the stuff we had in life, and we see them working through that, but we're not going to sin, so there's this great consolation, this great peace. We just have that goodness from God. But the suffering in purgatory is that you can't be united with God yet. all the goodness, you yearn towards him now because you don't have that sin in your life anymore. So there's all that wanting the good, but you're not with him yet. And that's what suffering, that's the greatest suffering there is, but it's suffering with consolation. So I love that in Narnia. So in The Last Battle, one of my favorite books, the two things I think show that it's a masterful story is that it answers in a way that's approachable to children, but also good for adults. It answers the problem of evil, all the different ways that people object to God's goodness on the grounds of evil. And it really shows us good meditation on purgatory. There's a bunch of other stuff it does, but those are the two main things, the two main parts that I think are very, very good. So I really enjoyed The Last Battle, and I encourage you to read that, all of C.S. Lewis's stuff, and all of the Narnia series. I hope that was helpful for you. You have a good day. God bless you.